In last few months, we have known that US aircraft carriers and multiple deployments are adjusting their position every now and then, especially in Middle East. And every time that happens, Iran concretizes further, brings on its shield and tries to protect its nuclear facilities. And this just shows the fact that whenever we are talking about wars, they do not start with explosion. They start with preparedness. This crisis is not immediate, it is gradually built. And this is the classic scenario that we are seeing in Middle East today, where the war has not been declared, it is not being declared, but it is being silently prepared for. And this is where we are seeing that the preparedness is at such a high stage that the war seems imminent. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are not just going to talk about how US might be ready to attack Iran, how Iran is prepared or not. We will be looking into these strategic signals which tell us that how complicated is the position in Middle East, how Middle East is at the boiling point and we don't know what is going to come next, and most importantly, where India stands amongst all of this. So when we are talking about this whole situation, the first question that is right in front of us is the fact that if we are talking about Middle East, is it near war? So whenever we are posed with this question, whenever we think that we are close to war, there are certain signals. Let me take you back to Operation Sindoor time last year. There were signals, there were preparedness, there were announcement of emergency drills, and that showed us the proximity to the war. And such signals in Middle East are in such high numbers as of now that it would be difficult to count. But we are going to look into three important reasons, factors that are right in front of us which indicate that war is coming. The only question here is, will the diplomacy actually work out before war, or unfortunately we have to see yet another conflict, war-laden region in front of us. So when we are looking at this particular scenario, we get to see that US-Iran relations, they have already entered a very high risk zone, which is not only marked by military build-up in Middle East, but also diplomatic deadlock and nuclear mistrust. And when we are talking about nuclear mistrust, we have to also go back to the point and understand this was the starting point of all of this. And even the recent statements by President Donald Trump and US administration also clearly show that they are ready for military action if the negotiations are failing. So they will not hesitate for a second, and this has been proved by the simultaneous military deployment that we are seeing. And it also indicates another important thing, that we are moving towards coercive bargaining positions, especially from US's end. So when we are talking about this situation, the escalation is at high rate. We see that the risk is heightening, but at the same time, the diplomacy, be it the lobbying of the Middle East states, be it US, be it other countries, they are lobbying to stop this conflict because it is going to create a lot of effect, not just on this region, but on the global scale itself. I've already covered this in detail back 2 to 3 weeks ago. You can go and watch that particular video to understand all the dynamics around it. But when we are talking about this specific situation, we again have to understand, as I was saying, that the risk is escalating. Diplomacy is trying to pull off, but we don't know what will work. Diplomacy might actually work, but there is a possibility, equal possibility, that the risk might offshoot and we see a war in front of us. And that is why the preparedness is from both ends. That is the indicator that we are going to talk about, because the crisis is not sudden, it is structurally built. And we are seeing that through multiple things, starting with the core cause itself. So if we talk about the core cause, I just mentioned it is the nuclear mistrust which is leading to the fallout in front of us. So in this context, we remember that this is the dispute. Iran's nuclear enrichment program is the core dispute that lies in front of us. The earlier nuclear deal has collapsed, it has not been working, and replacement framework which was thought of, you have to remember Iran and Israel's conflict last year, then we talked about a replacement framework that has also been stalled. So as of now, Iran is again saying that we do not have any nuclear weapon ambitions, but nobody is there to trust. So that is the mistrust I was talking about, and monitoring agencies are continuously cautious about this. So this is not just a factor, but this is also a cause in here, because when we see through satellite images that have surfaced, we find that the nuclear facilities and Iran have been concretized. They have been given more protection, better protection, and there has been concrete shielding, underground tunnels have been made, and sensitive sites have been reconstructed. So we clearly see from Iran's end that there is proper hardening of infrastructure. That means Iran is preparing for survival, first indicator of war. Furthermore, it raises the urgency of the adversaries. What I am talking about here? I am talking about Israel, I am talking about US. People who do not want the Iran's enrichment program to work out, they are worried that if they will take up an airstrike, then they might be hitting up a nuclear facility and they might not be prepared for consequences. So in this context, this is a primary reason for assuming that war is right here. Another biggest factor that is right in front of us is the US military buildup that we are seeing. This diagram clearly shows you that which are the position where aircrafts have been positioned, naval assets have been set, and US military sites are already present. So multiple sites around Iran we have. Furthermore, if you see at naval assets already present and aircraft position, this is the highest military deployment in Middle East of US, especially after Iraq war. So all sorts of attack preparedness at one end and protection on Iran's end suggests nothing but the fact that both of them know that diplomacy probably is not working out, conversations are not working out, and this is the way we are going to end up in, and we want to be prepared for it. And this is further justified from US's end that we are not only looking towards war, we want this to work as deterrence. That Iran should be running scared of the fact that how well deployed we are, and that might actually help us to bring Iran on the table to have the conversation. So basically, when we are talking about the strategic interpretation of the military deployment, it is being tried that we want to prevent war through intimidation, classic US example, and if this does not work, we want to be prepared for war. Both of the scenarios suggesting similar thing that we started the conversation with. Yes, we are focusing on diplomacy, but we are ready if the risk overshoots. And this particular fire is being further fueled by another important agent present, that is Israel. Because when we are talking about Israel, Israel is the hidden accelerator here, we are forgetting again and again. So Israel, if it wants, it can neutralize, it can accelerate the strike, or it can make the diplomacy actually work here. And another factor here which we cannot ignore at all is Israel, which is the hidden accelerator here. So in this situation, it is not unknown that Israel views Iranian facility as an existential threat, and they want to ensure action before weaponization, which we have already seen in past few years, where Israel does not shy away from direct strike no matter the consequences, believing that yes, US is right there. And in this context, even if Israel goes ahead, it will be US that will be probably, hopefully exercising the diplomacy factor, where they might be trying to prevent escalation, where they might be trying to neutralize the situation, just like it happened last year, but that happened after deadly strikes were taking place in Iran itself. So in this context, we have three straight reasons in front of us where we see that diplomacy is something that we are trying out, but there is much more preparedness for the war. But this is where another important angle comes in, and we can't ignore that, because when we are talking about this region, this is the fulcrum of oil market across earth. So we cannot ignore that part. We cannot also ignore Strait of Hormuz, that gives a critical geography. 20% of global oil supplies are coming from this particular route. Iran has threatened that, Iran will again threaten it, and if it comes to it, Iran will use it also. So these are the factors that might work as deterrents, but at the same time they show the fact that there are global stakes involved, which will bring us to the fact that when global stakes are involved, what are the stakes for India? Because given the timing, as of now, we get to say global supply is relatively stable, the prices are moderate. Why this is so? Because alternative producers are available, and that is why we are seeing that policymakers believe that current moment it is a manageable scenario. But the moment this flips into a war, there will be spike in oil prices, there will be disruption of trade routes, and it will also trigger financial instability, starting with Middle East region and gradually percolating across the global landscape. So when we are talking about this factor herein, it is not just a cause for war, it is also a cause for not making it happen, because the risks are way too high. But in past we have clearly seen there are times that US forgets the kind of security responsibility it holds in Middle East region and forgets also to weigh the risks that would come onto the global landscape because of the high and mighty placement it feels for itself. But in this context, we are not going to forget that. We will be looking at how it puts India in a huge lot of risk. Because yes, India will not be fighting for the war, fighting in the war and fighting with anybody, because we have diplomatic relations with Israel, Iran and US. So we wouldn't want to be directly involved at all, and we wouldn't be. But that does not mean that we will not be seeing consequences. We will be seeing consequences in terms of oil price shock. We are still heavily dependent on imports. This will come in a situation where we have probably promised that we will be reducing discounted Russian oil. In that context, inflation and slow growth is going to be a direct consequence. Once this sets in and the war is declared, volatility, especially in financial markets, goes without saying. This will also disrupt our trade. Why? Because when we are talking about Middle East, it happens to be an important location for our foreign trade. Not just imports but also exports. So that will be threatened. There will be extreme pressure on our currency, so which is already pressurized, that heightens. We might see more of depreciation. And most importantly, think of the huge diaspora that is Indian diaspora which is present in Middle East. Their rescue, their responsibility, and they will be returning, which will be also going to put an impact on the remittances and our foreign exchange reserves. So when we are looking at this, we get to see, when I have ranked it here, it is in terms of the impact that will be created. And if you want to bring in the development that we are talking about, strategic projects will also see major setbacks, because we cannot assume that it will be only Israel and Iran and US. Middle East states would also jump in from one side or another and try to neutralize. But once this chaos begins, there is no easy end which lies in front of us. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section. I'll be leaving you here with a prelims practice question. You can put down your answers in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.